creating a public forum of any sort when we enact those regulations and allow these types of installations in the city right away. So that's sort of a quick overview of why we're doing this. At the last study session in September of last year, the direction from council was to move forward with developing an ordinance, but to develop a stakeholder group of folks who have an interest in this particular subject, so as to provide some input and some information to staff working on this. So we went ahead and we invited, based on input we received from various groups, a stakeholder group to meet, which consisted of members of the rodeo board, different service organizations, the Boy Scouts, the Chamber of Commerce, the EDA, CWU, the DEI Commission, and a few other sorted folks, and of course, several staff members from my office, city manager's office, public works and utilities, as well as a few others. The stakeholder group met 3 times last year and this year, twice this year. At the last meeting, which was in April of this year, there was a draft ordinance for the stakeholder group to review and provide input. Based on their input to me and to the city, we revised that draft, which is what's in your council packet tonight. Again, I emphasize it is a draft, and the goal tonight would be to try and get some feedback from council and direction as to whether to move forward with this ordinance and of any suggested changes or concerns or issues to be discussed. So with that said, I'll move forward. So you have the ordinance in front of you, the draft ordinance. It would be a new chapter in the Ellensburg City Code. This is just a snapshot of the index that we would be adding. There is a purpose statement, and the reason for that is sort of to establish the legal basis for the ordinance. And as you can see that from that, it's at page 9 of your packet. The purpose is to number one, preserve the aesthetic character of the city, prevent a lot of banners and flags in the right of way that have nothing to do with the rationale for regulating this, which is to promote civic events, basically community events. It also promotes the public health, safety, and welfare by controlling the permit process for these types of installations, banners, flags, decorations. And it identifies specific locations where these installations can be made. So that all allows us to avoid visual clutter in the city's right of way, hopefully. It doesn't apply to city installations. So we have some welcome banners that are on various poles and streetlights in the city. So if the city is putting them up, then we're not, so to speak, regulating ourselves. So we've exempted the city from those regulations. And again, we're talking about non-commercial installations. So anything that's in the right of way of a commercial nature, a sign advertising a business, for instance, it's going to be separate. It's already regulated under the sign code, which is in chapter 3.12 of the Ellensburg City Code. So we're not touching that code, other than at the end of the ordinance, we had to do a few cleanups in that code to harmonize the two. But we're separating the two between non-commercial here and commercial in the sign code. Obviously, I forgot to mention, if you have questions as we move along, let me know. So there is a definitions section in the code, as we do with most of our codes. That's on pages 9 through 11 of your packet. Those are definitions, and there's several definitions, but the ones that we'll sort of talk about tonight primarily are these 5: street banner, street flags, decorations, official flags, and commemorative flags. And we'll kind of go through those, but I wanted to give you the examples of what they are in a visual manner. So this was the banner for the 100th rodeo that hung over. It's a street banner. It meets the street banner definition, hanging across 4th Avenue between Pearl and Main Street. So the other obvious example are the banners that hang across University Avenue that are hung by CWU. Street flags, this would be an example of a street flag. These are the rodeo flags that fly for the couple of weeks before the rodeo, and that they put up all over the downtown area. Decorations, really the best example of the decorations are the snowflakes that have gone up most every year in the downtown area on the street lamps with the globes and other street lamps. And then we have official flags. Official flags would be the flag of the United States, the state of Washington, and the POW MIA flag. Those are the ones that are recognized in Washington state law as official flags. They have specific requirements on where and how they're to be hung on municipal facilities. And then lastly, a new category we'll be talking about tonight is commemorative flags. And I won't go into the definition. It has a separate definition. It's not in the definition section at the beginning because it only appears in the section on commemorative flags. So we put the definition in there so it's clear. Examples would be the one for the one on the left, commemorating the 50th anniversary of the Vietnam War, and then the 9/11 commemorative flag. There are obviously many, many other commemorative flags. This is just to give you a couple of examples. So the first section you'll come to in the code is on locations. This is section 3.44.040. It's on page 11. And we've sort of separated out different by type. So I've already mentioned the street banners. Right now, we only have 2 locations. The primary location that has been used is the one on East University Way in front of the CWU campus. That is regulated for the most part by CWU. You get the banner request coming into you. I don't know if there's one tonight, but you frequently see those on the agenda as part of the consent agenda. The other location, as I mentioned, is the one at West 4th Avenue between Main and Pearl. That was both erected and is controlled by the city on city poles that were, it's usually put up by the light department. We've only had a couple of banners going across there. The one that was for the 100th anniversary last year was the first one in a number of years that had been put up there. We don't have a good process for that application to get those up right now. Part of what this code would do would set up that application process formally. The vertical banners, street flags, and decorations, as you can see, those are going to be limited to the street light poles that already have brackets. Those are located in our 4 zones that are identified there, mostly in the downtown area, although some of them do extend obviously into some of the other zones down Main Street and down University as well, and a couple others of the street. We also have, as you probably know, the flag post holes. Those are installed they're installed and the flags are placed by the Boy Scouts. They currently do that as I would call a fundraiser they get the businesses that want them to install those. They only install the American flag in those post holes, and those are installed for all the official holidays recognized between Memorial Day and I think Veterans Day. And they put those up and they take those down. So the city traditionally has not had any control or exercised any control over that, other than I think there was a agreement at some point in the past with the Boy Scouts about that. There are official flags, as I mentioned, those are reserved for city installations, which would include here at City Hall, the library, EPD, a few other city buildings around town. We currently do not have a map of where the Boy Scout post holes are. We're going to have to work with them to develop that map. We know where some of them are just visually and when they go up, but we've been in contact with them and intend to try and get a map that we can include as a resource for folks so we know where they are. The next section would be section 344.060, which talks about permits and permit applications. That's on pages 12 through 14 of your packet. There would be a permit required for any installation of banners, flags, and decorations. You'll see that the application has to be submitted by a qualified applicant. And the ordinance defines a qualified applicant with 3 conditions. They have to be an organization that maintains an office or other presence in the city of Ellensburg. And by other presence, you could have community organizations that don't maintain an office here, but they certainly do a lot of community work here. An example would be, United Way of Central Washington. It might be the Rotary or Kittitas County Pride organizations that have been here and have events, but they just don't have an official office, or they use some other facility. Rotary meets regularly at one of the downtown businesses, for instance. And then the organization has to have an IRS tax, a certification as being tax exempt, so they're nonprofits, in other words. And that organization that applies should be the primary organizer of the community event or city-sponsored event. And community event has its own definition, which means a recreational, entertainment, educational, charitable, or similar event intended and held for the benefit of the entire community and which is open to attendance by the entire community. Yeah.
Just a quick question, Terry. Thank you. For the Boy Scouts,
Yeah.
the scenario, would they be subject to the same permit requirements?
Well,
I mean,
we've talked
given
about
what
that,
they
but
do.
I think what we have suggested is that they make sure that they work with Public Works to identify where it's appropriate, but they wouldn't necessarily be going through the permit process.
Okay,
since they
I was
already
trying to, because they're putting the flags up. They're not an organizer of an event. That's what.
Right. They're just recognizing the official state and U.S. holidays in that period.
Thank you.
Good question. Continuing on the applications, similar to what we have done with our special event permits, the permit application would be due as far as 12 months out from the event, but no sooner than 30 days before the event. Really, that's the minimum time usually required to try and get these processed and get them reviewed by staff. In this case, the ordinance is set up that the applications will be submitted through the Public Works Department, since they control the right of way. And they would be reviewing the applications for conformance to the permit requirements that they have to put in there. The one exception to that would be the Rodeo Association requested that for their flags, if they could have, in essence, the time blocked out from anybody else applying for the 3 weeks prior to and the 1 week subsequent to the rodeo. And in discussions with staff, we felt that was reasonable, so someone doesn't just somehow jump on the Labor Day holiday season to try and get something else downtown, since the rodeo obviously is a longstanding event in the community. As I said, the application review would be similar to special events. The only exception to that would be the University Way banners they now go through CWU, and we're not going to change that process. From that standpoint, it'll be a similar process. But we will take it out of the ordinance suggests taking it out of the city council approval process, since that seems to be somewhat superfluous at this point. It would be reviewed internally by staff, although it could be brought to city council if there was some question about the appropriateness of the banner. There's a section in the code about sponsorships, which is in 340.44.070. That's on page 14 of your packet. And this is really talking about, community events oftentimes have both non-commercial and commercial sponsorships. The primary purpose, of course, should be to promote community or city-sponsored events. So there are some prohibitions about sponsorship, which is really intended to promote a commercial product, sales or services, really isn't appropriate for the banner. Political advocacy, for obvious reasons, this is city speech, and we are not going to be able to, we don't really want political advocacy, just as we don't allow it in our council meetings here. For candidates or ballot measures. Religious events or services that are promoting a particular religious belief, in other words, a non-denominational event that's open again to the community and promotes a community event, would be permissible. But if it's for a specific religious event or promoting a particular religious belief, it would not be, and that's consistent with our Washington State Constitution. it would be permissible to allow a logo for commercial sponsorship as long as it's not the predominant graphic for the flag or banner, but just to acknowledge that there has been, sponsorship. As you know, we often see for some of our events, we're fortunate that we have a lot of sponsors for community events, and it's a mix often of both nonprofit and commercial sponsorships. The Director of Public Works is allowed to add conditions to permits if necessary, but street banners will have to conform depending on whether intending to hang them to either the CWU standards or to the city's public works and utilities requirement standards. So that would be, things like strength of the banner, wind strength, and other size, things like that. They'll still be, both of those will be put up by either CWU or city personnel, though. The permits will be valid for 2 weeks, except for the rodeo. Again, an exception for the rodeo, since it is the rodeo parade and the rodeo itself. The advertisement that covers, usually 2 to 3 weeks beforehand. And also holiday decorations, the snowflakes, things like that would be allowed to be maintained for what would be a reasonable period of time determined by city staff and based on the holiday or whatever other decorations are going up. Otherwise, they have to be removed within 3 days of the end date for the permit, and there are cost recovery mechanisms we'll have in place if for some reason they don't and they won't for some reason. We also have a section on licensed installers, and this is primarily for things like the street flags, things that are going up on light poles, and that's in section 344.090 on page 15 of your packet. And really what this is intended to do is that if we have people who are going to install some of these themselves, in the past, people have put them up in a variety of ways. Sometimes they're just frankly standing up on the back of a pickup bed, which could be, from a risk management standpoint, a little worrisome. So this would just require that we have the same requirement for commercial signs in the sign code. This sort of borrows from that and says they have to have a city business license so that we know that they're legitimate. They have to have general liability insurance so that they're protecting both the public and the city. And that protection also would be extended through a hold harmless agreement with the city. So those would be the requirements. There is no technical requirement that they have to have some specialization in installing signs or brackets or banners, but we feel that because of the insurance requirement, that we'll leave that to the insurance company to determine that it's proper for them to be doing that. Again, the hardware requirements on city poles, light poles, and other city poles would be driven by public works and utility requirements. So we talked about official flags. Again, that's set by state law. The code also allows for official flags to include other governmental entities. An example might be if the city wanted to fly the flag of for example, a sister city, that would be considered an official flag. These are only flown on the city's flagpoles. So we may need to maybe broaden that a little bit. We've been talking about how to incorporate the Boy Scouts flags, since those are official flags under state law. It may make sense to sort of include that as part of the official flag section of this ordinance and take it out of the street flags, since it really doesn't fit very well there. So that would be one amendment staff would probably recommend to make. So commemorative flags are discussed in section 344.110, which is on page 16 of your packet. Again, commemorative flags would be allowed as government speech. That means we have to review the applications. They have to be approved. There's a fairly narrow definition of what a commemorative flag needs to be to meet the definition. And significantly, it can only be requested to be flown by either a member of council or I left out here, it could also be requested by vote of a city commission or board, recommended up through council then. It would have to be approved in an open meeting as a agenda item. And then the flag would be purchased or temporarily donated to the city, purchased by the promoter of the commemorative flag or temporarily donated to the city. And then it would stay up for whatever staff would determine. It'd probably be in the staff report an appropriate amount of time for that commemorative flag, depending on what it's commemorating. And if this moves forward, then we could also figure out how to incorporate a request for commemorative flags, perhaps as part of the proclamation application process, because we anticipate that's where many of these requests would come. The ordinance doesn't really identify where commemorative flags would be flown. And recently, we've been discussing whether there should be a flagpole at Unity Park. I think that's the current plan with a new Unity Park redo, so to speak. So that would be, one suggestion, and it would also be an ideal spot to just have it flown in one location, so that we don't have to have multiple locations. It's difficult. Some cities have it on their city hall property, but we have one flagpole and 3 flags already on it, and it becomes, I think, complicated to have too many more flags, especially if you have a situation where you're flying flags at half staff, which happens with more frequency than most people probably realize. There's an enforcement mechanism in there today, as well. That's in section 3.44.120 on page 17 of the packet. And really, this is consistent with all our other ordinances that provide regulation of one type or another. And as stated here, it first of all allows us to have a code enforcement mechanism if someone is just putting up things willy-nilly without going through the permit process. But it's really to gain compliance. It's not intended as punishment. It gives us a lever to work with whoever put those up. We do the same thing. Sometimes people will put up signs in public parks, particularly campaign signs, or even we see commercial signs in public property. And we have those are violations of our code. We've never cited someone for that, because fortunately, once code enforcement is initiated and we make a call to the person, that's our first avenue of enforcement. Say, hey, you may not have been aware, but you can't have these signs in the public parks, or we've had them here on City Hall property. We've never had a problem that I can recall with compliance, and the same would be presumably true here. We will need to have a cost recovery mechanism for processing not just processing the application, but also with some of the installations. If city crews are required to either do the installations of the flags, or certainly for the banners across 4th Avenue, we will have to develop a cost recovery model for that. My suggestion would be that we bring that back to you as a resolution to approve any cost recovery. I didn't put it in the ordinance by intent, because in the past it's problematic when you need to change an amount of recovery and it's in an ordinance. It's very cumbersome, and not everybody sees it in the ordinance, and they don't wonder what it's costing to do something. So if it's in the resolution, obviously it'll then make it to the application packet and on the Public Works webpage, which will be devoted to this type of permit process. We've spoke about commemorative flags. That's a discussion item as well. Should it be limited to Unity Park or is somewhere else? And then there's probably some other issues I may have glossed over or didn't identify that you want to discuss. So the next steps for us will be to develop maps for where these banners, flags, decorations can be hung, the permissible areas. Again, establish the cost recovery model. And then once those are done, bring back a version of the ordinance for actual consideration of first reading, and if first reading is approved, then second reading and adoption, along with a resolution for cost recovery. So flew through that pretty fast, but we have time for questions now.
Questions for staff?
Question. Just for clarification, Terry, on the holes that the Boy Scouts have put down.
Yes.
If a business owner wants to display flags in front of his property in those holes, is that going to be allowed?
Well, not under the ordinance, because at that point, if the business owner is doing it, it's no longer government speech. They've just used our right of way for a public forum. It would be sort of like if someone just went it. It's no different than if someone wanted to hang a flag of some sort on one of our street light poles. So yeah, we would like to limit that just to the Boy Scouts because it's an official flag. So it meets the government speech test, and otherwise we get into a whole nother area of trying to regulate businesses.
A suggestion on page 17, the letter F.
Sorry, what section are you on? Because I don't have.
Section 3344.110.
Yes.
You say in letter F, the last statement, commemorative flags must be the same size or smaller than the U.S. and Washington flags. It might be helpful to put the dimensions of those flags in the ordinance so that the person would know.
I'll have to look at that because not all flags are the same size. You can get different size flags. We fly one size here, but that doesn't mean they're all the same. But we could look into that. Yep. Thank you.
David? You didn't have.
Okay. Thanks, Terry. Just a couple other questions, just because. I just wanted to make sure I understood. I think you answered part of it already. The holes that are in the sidewalks that the Boy Scouts installed are not available for street flags, or would they be?
Correct. It would only be for
Okay.
the U.S. flags
Okay.
during the holidays.
Okay, so then my other related question that was under, on page 15, under 4490090. This is the installer part, but the part that caught my eye was installation of new holes in the right of way shall require prior notice to Public Works. So in that scenario, who would be requesting, it wouldn't
And
be
that's, yeah, sorry.
official flags, right? They just-
Yeah, it would, and that's where I wanted sort of add that to the commemorative flag section, move that out of there because it would just be the Boy Scouts continue to solicit businesses to put flags in front of them. So they requested the ability to still use the right of way to do that. So yeah, that section will probably be moved and limited to that particular use.
Okay. And last question, I think, under commemorative flags, City of Ellensburg has a flag, as I recall. I've taken it to AWC conferences and done the flag walk thing. I don't know if it's an official flag of the city. Oh, it's right there. Does that, I didn't see it listed under the commemorative flag examples, but would that be the right category for that? And would the restrictions be applied?
That, I think that would probably, I'd have to look at the history of the flag, but it might just fall under official flag definition. Since it's a governmental
Official flag.
official, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Rich.
No, I'm gonna,
I do have one other question, a clarification, Terry, on 344.080, letter B, permit duration, or not. It seems to me that this is worded that if a group needed or wanted to display a flag for a month, like if the DEI Commission wanted to display the Pride flag for the month of June, would that be permissible under this? If we'd have to ask permission to do that, or?
So are you talking about a commemorative flag, for instance, if it were at Unity Park, or street flags that would be up on poles?
At Unity Park.
That would be under the commemorative flag section, and that one allows flexibility as to how long the flag is allowed to stay up.
I wasn't sure if that
Yep.
pertained to that.
So Rich, I have a question or
Yes, go ahead.
Um, so on page 16,
This is Nancy Lilquist, by the way. She's
I'm sorry. This is Nancy. On 344-100 and D, it says only official flags will be flown on flagpoles at City Hall and other city facilities. And then the next section A says that you could fly commemorative flags at city-owned or maintained properties. And that just kind of seemed in conflict to me. If we're only going to fly official flags at city properties, but anyway, my comment is the discussion about having a commemorative flag pole at Unity Park and only Unity Park. When we kind of had that discussion, I was picturing more of the holes in the sidewalk for the like the Boy Scout flags, and so that it creates this kind of mass. So like if the DEI Commission wanted to fly the Pride flag or Juneteenth flag or something, you could create kind of visually there'd be a lot of flags, not just one flag on a pole up high, but just as an option at Unity Park. But I do think that needs to be clarified. But I do think that the only place we should be flying commemorative flags is at Unity Park and not other city facilities. And I do support moving the Boy Scout flags to the official flag section, because the conversations, they don't want, they have contracts with those businesses and they don't want other kinds of flags being flown in front of those businesses, just the US flag. So, but it would create an opportunity at Unity Park if we had the same kind of holes for flags like the Pride flag or Veterans Day flags or whatever. Anyway, those are my comments.
Good. Thanks for those suggestions.
Kind of feels like the Wizard of Oz when she talks, but okay. So you asked about cost recovery. General consensus among the council is that we want cost recovery included in the next version.
Yep.
And do we want to talk about anything more on the commemorative flag location? I mean, Nancy just kind of summed it up, but does anybody want something different than what Nancy just said, or you want different considerations or possibilities? Okay, so this is a question to the council. This is marked as not public comment, but this can be an emotional issue for people. I don't mean that in a negative way, but I'd rather get some public comment now.
Yep.
So I need you guys to say you want public comment.
Yeah, I would. Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So we're going to open up public comment to this specific issue. So banners, flags, the presentation that was just made. If anybody in the audience in attendance wishes to speak, we'll do the 3-minute. And I don't have anybody online besides Nancy and the people that are in. Wait a minute, I got a hand up. What is that? Drew? We have one? Okay, so I'm gonna read the,
Kayleen Carnell has her hand up.
Eileen.
okay. Let me just read the rules here real quick, so I'm being consistent. Limited to 3 minutes, no disruption of the meeting, repeat the orderly conduct, recognize to speak, state your name, live in the city, county, or elsewhere, representing yourself or others. And you got you know how to talk on Zoom. limited to 3 minutes, and we'll limit comment time to that which is left of the meeting. Don't identify yourself as a candidate in public office or any statement on a campaign issue for or against. Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, Terry. Thanks for the update on this. I'm just kind of looking for some clarification myself.
Eileen, hang on just a sec. Drew, you're getting feedback from the lobby.
Yeah,
Okay, go ahead. We'll restart you. Sorry.
okay, no worries. Thanks. I'm just looking for some clarification. And again, and I'm not trying to, raise the issue again and again, but I have questions about the street flags. And my questions are around, I understand that it's a fundraiser and there are contracts with the Boy Scouts and this kind of stuff, but I'm kind of curious as to how that plays out with the original business that contract was made with, that is no longer that business in front of that flagpole anymore. Although that flagpole is still within the city right away. And that if there was any other, as mentioned, any other organization that has a base in Ellensburg, a 501c3 or nonprofit organization that has a base in Ellensburg, like Pride or any other organization that is looking to do something like around Martin Luther King Day or around Cinco de Mayo or Juneteenth or something like this, that I'm just looking for clarification that going through the permit process is not an option for using those poles or using those spots.
To answer your second question, yeah, that's correct. It would not be an option. As to the Boy Scouts contracts, we can reach out to them. I don't know what their practice is when one business moves out and another moves in, and how they handle that. But we could certainly reach out and find out what that practice is.
Okay, okay.
Can I respond? And I think that's why the conversation went to having that opportunity only at Unity Park instead of spread throughout the community, and then you have kind of a mass of flags like that, but it's not scattered all through town, hit and miss.
I understand that. I don't understand why that's an issue when we're talking about a pride flag all over town compared to an American flag all over town. It's the same number of flags, and when we're talking about the American flag in those post holes, we're not talking about them being a risk or a hazard to pedestrians on sidewalks or scattered all over town. I'm just curious to what the difference is.
I think it has to do with the contracts with the businesses.
So Tylene, would you be willing to just provide that input, to city staff and to council? And this is going to go through a couple different steps as we move forward, but I think I understand what the input is or the questions are.
Sure, you bet. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anybody else? Nobody online? Okay. Council, do you have any questions of staff? Comments? Okay. We will suspend and come back at